In the heart of West Africa, amid the red dust of Burkina Faso's forgotten goldfields, a quiet storm of truth has begun to rise. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary leader who has stood against foreign exploitation, has once again defied the silence imposed by the West. This time, it's not about sanctions or speeches. It's about memory, a memorial, a monument to 32 fallen gold miners whose deaths were buried beneath layers of lies, greed, and silence. For years, their story was erased, their names never spoken, their bodies lost beneath the earth they once dug for the world's luxury. But Traoré decided that silence would no longer be an option. The forgotten tragedy. It began in the small mining town of Yalgo, a remote part of Burkina Faso where men risk their lives daily in the narrow veins of gold-rich earth. Most of these miners were locals, fathers, brothers, sons, working for small wages under brutal conditions in mines owned by multinational companies. The West had long called it investment, but for the people of Burkina Faso, it was theft. Gold worth billions was extracted each year, yet the miners barely earned enough to feed their families. The land was poisoned, the air filled with dust, and safety was a forgotten word. Then came the day everything changed. On a quiet afternoon, an explosion echoed through the Yalgo mine. It was sudden, violent, and catastrophic. 32 miners were trapped underground when one of the shafts collapsed. The company blamed equipment failure. Locals said it was negligence. Others whispered it was sabotage. For 3 days, families waited. Mothers cried at the mine's entrance, clutching photos of their sons. But help never came. The company sealed the site within days, declaring it too dangerous for rescue operations. Bodies were never recovered. And just like that, 32 lives vanished into the earth. Their deaths reduced to a footnote in a corporate report. A silence bought by gold. When the tragedy reached the local press, international companies were quick to act. Payments were made, officials silenced, and media reports vanished almost overnight. Burkina Faso's government at the time, still under Western influence, issued a short statement calling it an industrial accident. No investigation, no accountability, no justice. The families who protested were threatened. The few who spoke out disappeared. Foreign executives left the country days later, escorted quietly out of Ouagadougou's airport under diplomatic protection. It was as if the miners had never existed. The West continued to praise stability in Burkina Faso's mining sector. Western news agencies reported nothing. To the world, the tragedy never happened. But the people remembered. A new dawn under Traoré. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré came to power in 2022, he inherited a nation exhausted by corruption and betrayal. For decades, Burkina Faso's gold had enriched others, France, Canada, the UK, while its own people sank deeper into poverty. Traoré, however, was not like the leaders before him. He was not a puppet. He was a soldier who believed in the sovereignty of Africa, a man who spoke of reclaiming what belongs to us. In one of his first acts as leader, Traoré ordered a review of all foreign mining contracts. Billions in undeclared gold exports were discovered, a massive theft hidden under partnership agreements. But more than the money, he found something else. A classified report about the Yalgo mine disaster. A report that named Western executives, corrupt officials, and the local silence that followed. He was furious. He read the names of the 32 miners, their ages, their villages, their families. And he made a promise. Their story will not be erased. Not anymore. The birth of the memorial. Months later, construction began near Yalgo. Not a mine this time, but a memorial. a towering structure carved from local stone, rising above the fields of gold dust that had swallowed so many lives. The design was symbolic. 32 pillars stood in a circle, each representing one fallen miner. In the center burned an eternal flame. The fire of memory, as Traoré called it. Around it, the ground was laid with gold dust mixed with earth from the miners' village, symbolizing the unity of the land and its people. Engraved on each pillar were not only the miners' names, but also the words, "Burkina Faso will remember what others tried to erase." Traoré personally attended the inauguration. In a speech broadcast across the nation, his voice was calm but resolute. "For too long, the world has dug our earth and buried our people. They took our gold, but tried to steal our truth. This memorial is not just for the 32 miners. It is for every African who has died in silence for the wealth of others. We will not forget, and we will not forgive the erasure of our pain." Crowds wept as he spoke. Mothers who had lost their sons were present, holding photographs faded by years of waiting. Soldiers stood beside miners, students beside elders. It was a rare moment of unity, a symbol that the new Burkina Faso was not afraid to face its past, the West's uneasy silence. The reaction from the West was immediate and uncomfortable. Foreign media barely covered the memorial. The few who did called it a political move or anti-Western propaganda. Diplomats in Ouagadougou released cautious statements about remembering all victims of industrial accidents. But behind closed doors, officials worried. Traoré's gesture was more than symbolic. It was revolutionary. By acknowledging the erased tragedy, he was challenging the narrative of Western development aid in Africa. He was exposing the dark truth that beneath every contract and investment, there were lives lost, resources stolen, and histories buried. The memorial wasn't just a monument. It was an accusation. The families finally speak. With the memorial complete, something powerful began to happen. Families who had stayed silent for years began to speak. Women came forward, recounting how their husbands were forced to work extra shifts without safety checks. Former miners revealed that the company had ignored warnings about gas buildup and unstable tunnels. One survivor, who had escaped the collapse by sheer luck, told the national broadcaster, "They told us our lives were replaceable. They said gold must not stop flowing. But now, thanks to Traoré, our brothers are remembered." For many, it was the first time their pain was acknowledged. Local artists began painting murals of the miners. Schools held storytelling sessions about them. The memorial became a pilgrimage site, a place where people left offerings of soil, tools, or small gold stones in remembrance. A message to the world. Traoré's decision to build the memorial sent a clear message. Burkina Faso's gold would no longer shine on the suffering of its people. He declared that 30% of all future mining revenue would go into a national development fund, directly benefiting local communities. He ordered that all foreign mining companies operating in Burkina Faso must publicly disclose their safety records and revenue shares, something never done before in the region. And most importantly, he announced a national day of remembrance for all African workers who lost their lives under colonial or corporate exploitation. "We cannot build a new Africa on a foundation of forgotten graves," Traoré said. His words spread far beyond Burkina Faso. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, nations also reclaiming control over their resources, people held rallies in solidarity. The 32 miners became a symbol for all Africans who had died digging for others' wealth. The West's attempt to rewrite the story. Soon after the memorial gained attention, Western media outlets began publishing counter-narratives. They claimed the event was politically motivated, that the memorial exaggerated the tragedy, and that Traoré was using emotion to fuel nationalism. But African journalists pushed back, demanding transparency from the companies involved. Leaked documents revealed that at least one major Western firm had indeed concealed safety violations at the Yalgo site. The truth was undeniable. Still, Western governments avoided responsibility. Instead, they tightened sanctions, suspended mining investments, and warned their citizens against traveling to Burkina Faso. They called Traoré authoritarian for nationalizing the mines, yet ignored that those very mines had been built on African blood. The fire that cannot be extinguished. Months after the memorial's unveiling, the flame at its center still burns day and night. Locals say it never goes out, even during heavy rain. To them, it's a sign, a symbol that no amount of propaganda or silence can kill the truth. Each year, on the anniversary of the disaster, people gather at the site. They sing old miner songs, light candles, and read the names aloud. The memorial has become not just a monument, but a movement. It has inspired similar initiatives across Africa. In Mali, a memorial for soldiers lost in foreign-backed conflicts. In Niger, a monument for uranium miners poisoned by Western companies. Across the continent, the message echoes. Africa remembers. The deeper meaning behind Traoré's act. For Traoré, the memorial is more than politics. It's a philosophy. He believes that true independence begins when a nation controls not just its land, but its memory. The West, he argues, did not only colonize Africa's soil, it colonized its stories. It erased its heroes, silenced its tragedies, and rewrote its past. By restoring the truth, Traoré seeks to restore dignity. They taught us to forget, he once said, but memory is power, and when a nation remembers, it rises. The memorial stands as proof of that belief, a physical reminder that no empire, no corporation can permanently bury the truth. The gold then glows with pain. Today, when Burkina gold leaves the country, it carries a different weight. It is no longer just a mineral. It is a symbol of struggle and resistance. Traoré has ordered that every gold export carry a national mark, or du peuple, meaning the people's gold. It's a statement that this wealth belongs first to the people, not to foreign investors or middlemen. For the families of the 32 miners, that mark means everything. Their loved ones' deaths now have meaning, not erased, not forgotten, but immortalized in the story of a rising Africa. A lesson to the world. What Traoré built in Yalgo is not just a memorial. It is a mirror. It reflects the uncomfortable truth the world tries to ignore, that the modern wealth of many nations was built on the suffering of others. But it also reflects something more powerful, hope, the belief that even the smallest nation can reclaim its dignity when it refuses to forget. The West may have tried to erase the story of the 32 miners, but Traoré turned their silence into a song of defiance, of justice, of remembrance. And now, every time the flame flickers against the dark sky of Burkina Faso, it whispers the same message to the world. We remember, we rise, and we will never be erased again. The West's hidden fear. Behind closed doors, Western corporations began to panic. If Burkina Faso could demand accountability for one erased tragedy, what would stop others from doing the same? What if Mali, Niger, or Congo built memorials for their dead miners, their poisoned workers, their vanished protesters? What if Africa began to document every scar left by exploitation? That fear is why Western powers tried to discredit Traoré, labeling him as anti-democratic. They wanted to shift the global conversation away from his message. But no amount of propaganda could erase the flame now burning across Africa. Because once truth is spoken, it cannot be unheard. A new kind of independence. Traoré often says that independence is not a flag, it is control over your destiny. Burkina Faso's independence, like that of many African nations, was only symbolic for decades. Real power lay with those who owned the gold. But by building a memorial to the miners, Traoré redefined independence. He showed that freedom begins with remembering, that when a people know their history, they cannot be manipulated by lies. The Yalgo Memorial has now become part of the country's national identity. It appears in textbooks, on stamps, even in the national anthem's new verse written by local poets. Children grow up learning the names of the miners, not as victims, but as heroes who sparked a revolution of memory. Even today, the old Yalgo mine remains sealed. Grass grows over it, and birds nest near the entrance. Locals say that on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can hear faint echoes, not of machines, but of voices. They say the earth remembers, and maybe that's true, because when the West buried the miner's story, it buried it in African soil, and that soil has now spoken back. The same land that took their lives now holds their legacy. Every gust of wind that passes over Yalgo carries a whisper of truth that the era of forgetting is over. In 2025, 1 year after the memorial's completion, Traoré inaugurated a new initiative, the African Memory Project, a continental archive of all forgotten tragedies linked to exploitation, from mines and plantations to oil fields and factories. He invited other African leaders to contribute records, testimonies, and photographs. Mali, Guinea, and Niger joined immediately. Soon, Kenya, Congo, and Senegal followed. The archive's motto is simple: to remember is to rebuild. Burkina Faso, once seen as one of the poorest nations, has become the moral compass of a continent reclaiming its story. As night falls over the memorial, the flame continues to glow, a small light against a vast horizon. Tourists visit quietly, journalists document respectfully, and local guards maintain the site with pride. But for the people, it is more than a monument. It is a heartbeat, a reminder that Africa's true wealth lies not in its gold, but in its memory. The West tried to erase the miners by burying their bodies. Traoré resurrected them by remembering their names. And in doing so, he taught the world a lesson: you cannot silence the earth that remembers its children. Generations from now, when people speak of Burkina Faso's rebirth, they will not just mention revolutions or reforms. They will mention the memorial. Because the story of the 32 gold miners is the story of every African whose life was taken for someone else's profit. And the flame Traoré lit for them is the same flame burning in the hearts of millions who are now ready to reclaim their truth. Perhaps that is why the West feared it so much. Because remembrance is more powerful than rebellion. For centuries, Africa's oppressors wrote history. Now, Africa is writing memory. And that memory begins with 32 names carved in stone, standing proudly beneath the sky of a nation that finally said, "We are the keepers of our dead. We are the guardians of our gold. We are the authors of our own story." They dug for gold, but the earth became their grave. 32 miners vanished, and the West erased their story. Years later, Captain Ibrahim Traoré built a memorial to honor their names, a flame of truth burning against silence. This isn't just remembrance. It's Africa reclaiming its stolen history.